Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm gonna finally drop my Infiniti G20. As you guys can see, the stock suspension is not terribly bad, but I do want it a little bit lower just so that it can be more flush with the wheels. Here's a close-up shot of the wheel gap on my stock suspension. And if you guys are just wondering, these are 215 45s 17 tires that I have on the car right here. There's a fast and easy way to determine if your car needs to be dropped. Now, Mighty Car Mods first came up with this idea a few years ago, and I believe it's a great idea to check to see if you need to be dropped. So we're gonna go ahead and get our shoe, and if you're able to fit it in between the wheel and the fender, that means that your car needs to be lowered. So as you guys can clearly see, there's plenty of space for the shoe to fit, so obviously that means we need to drop the car. We're gonna do a better scientific test to determine our stock height. So we're gonna get ourselves a tape measurement, and we're gonna go ahead and measure from the ground to the top of the fender right here. And we're about 25 inches and a half. So that's in the front. We're gonna go ahead and take the measurement in the back as well. So in the rear, we are about 26 inches, a little bit under 26 inches. So we're gonna go ahead and get our stuff ready so that we can drop the car. Just in case you guys were wondering, these are the parts that I'm gonna use to replace the stock suspension. Now right here on the right I have S-Tech Tein lowering springs. Now those are progressive springs, so they should keep the suspension nice and smooth. We're just gonna make it a little bit more stylish and drop it. On the left hand side I have KYB shocks. Now I strongly encourage you guys to replace your shocks if you're lowering down your car. If you don't do that, you're gonna get a very bumpy, sluggish ride because the shock absorbers are gonna be worn out. You guys might have noticed that one shock is a different color from the other ones, but according to KYB they should technically be all the same. And just in case you guys were wondering where I got these parts from, I got the lowering springs from eBay and the KYB shocks from Rock Auto. There is one more thing that I want to mention to you guys before we start taking the parts off of the car, and that is that this is going to be a very dangerous job, and you guys should be very careful when you guys are removing those springs because they're under a lot of pressure, and if you guys don't do this right, you guys can get seriously hurt. So in order for us to do everything the proper way, you have to get the proper tools. So we have right here a set of spring compressing tool. Now you guys really need to get this type right here if you guys are trying to do this by yourself. So we have the pin right here that latches the spring on all four. So it's very important that you guys get a tool that has this, and also you guys can see that it's very thick compared to the old school ones that are just like one hook. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start taking parts off of the car. Before we start, these are some of the tools that we're gonna need to do this job. Starting off on the left hand side, we're gonna need a 3/8 ratchet. We're also gonna need some sockets. We're gonna need a size 10mm socket, size 12, 14, 17, 19, and 21. You're also gonna need some wrenches, 14, 17, 19, and then you're gonna need an adjustable wrench as well. And over here to my right, we're gonna have some extensions. So we have two different sizes that we're gonna be using. Over here to the right, we have a breaker bar. We're gonna be using that, so make sure that you guys have one. We are also gonna be needing a flathead screwdriver, a large one and a small one. We're gonna be needing a hammer, and if you guys don't have electric impact or air impact, you guys don't need to worry about this, but I suggest you guys have some of these if you're attempting to do this job, since compressing the spring is pretty hard, and if you're doing it with just your ratchet, it's going to take you forever. We're going to first start off by jacking up the car. Since we're going to be replacing the front springs and the rear springs along with the shocks, we're going to go ahead and jack up the car completely. If you guys only have two jack stands, go ahead and just jack them up from the front and then do the rear. First thing we're gonna do is remove these lug nuts off of the car. If you guys don't have impact guns, make sure to loosen up the lug nuts when the car is on the ground, because if you try to take them off right now, you're not gonna be able to. So let's go ahead and remove them. This is a 21 millimeter on this car. Let's go ahead and get the wheel out of the way. The first thing that we're gonna loosen up is this guy right here. This is a size 17 millimeter. So go ahead and get your ratchet and then get your wrench. They're both 17 millimeters, and you're gonna go ahead and put one on the back of the fastener and one front. So if for whatever reason you can't break this with just your ratchet, you're gonna be needing your breaker bar. So in my case, I'm not able to break this just like this. So we're gonna go ahead and get our breaker bar. So we got the breaker bar attached to our 17 millimeter. I'm gonna go ahead and break this loose. And then once you have it cracked loose, you can continue to use your ratchet to take it off the rest of the way. Next, what we need to do is remove our brake line out of the way and the ABS line. So go ahead and get the large flathead and get the hammer, and you're gonna want to hit this right here at the corner so it can push out this clip holding the brake line. Just like that, and then you just push this in and push it out of the way. Next, what we need to do is remove the ABS wire out of the way. In order to do that, there's two fasteners holding down the bracket attached to the ABS wire. So go ahead and get your 3/8 ratchet and a size 10 millimeter socket, and then just go ahead and loosen these guys and remove the fasteners out of the way. There's going to be one exactly like that one on this side right here. So go ahead and remove it. This one is also going to be a size 10 millimeter. So get your ratchet and remove it. Next, what we need to do is remove this 17 millimeter fastener out of the way. This is what's going to be holding down the shock absorber to the part of the suspension right here. So what you need to do is get a size 17 millimeter wrench. Go ahead and put it on here, just like so. And then next, what we need to do is get our breaker bar. Let me show you guys. You're going to get in our breaker bar, and we're gonna put the breaker bar on the other side of the fastener, and then we're gonna crack them loose. So we're gonna go ahead and just try to crack this nut loose. Now that we have loosened up most of the suspension bolts on the bottom, we're gonna go ahead and remove them completely. So go ahead and loosen up the nut on top right here. Get your hammer, and what you're gonna do is hammer this out. Be careful when you push this out, it's gonna wanna come down forward, so just be careful. We're gonna do the same thing to the bottom right here. Go ahead and get the hammer and hit the bottom bolt out. It should be over here. If you're having a hard time removing it, go ahead and get your wrench and then just pry on here and then remove it. Just like so. And then just wiggle it out. In order to fully remove this, what you need to do is get a flathead and then just try to pry this upper linkage out. So we're gonna see if we can get our flathead in there. All right, now that everything's pretty much loosened. The only thing holding this on here is just the 3 fasteners on top. So let's go ahead and pop our hood and remove them. Now that we popped our hood open, we have access to the last 3 fasteners that are holding down the shock. So all of these guys right here are going to be 12 millimeters. So just go ahead and remove them. And I'm just going to put the fasteners to the side. When you get to the last one like this, what you want to do is put one hand underneath the fender to hold down the shock so that it doesn't fall on your brake lines. This is how the shock is going to look like when you loosen everything up. Now let's go ahead and remove it out of the vehicle. Try to move this linkage down so it can give you a little bit of access when you're removing it. Now go ahead and lift up the shock, and then you're going to want to try to move your lines out of the way. Once you get over one of them, you should be able to remove it. Now that we got the shock absorber out, we're going to go ahead and compress the spring so that we're able to get out the old shock absorber and install the new one. So, as I mentioned to you guys in the beginning of the video, we're going to be using this tool right here. Now, it's vital that you guys have this tool, because if you don't, it's pretty much impossible to replace the springs and replace the shock. Anyways, let's go ahead and put this on the spring and compress it so that we're able to remove the top hat, which is pretty much the only thing that we need. First thing that we need to do with the tool is to remove this guy out of the way. And trust me when I say that you guys don't want to have them together. It's going to be really hard to fit these guys in the spring. So just do what I'm doing. So once you have it out, this is going to be facing up. So we're going to try to fit it in the spring, and then we're going to go down a few inches, maybe right around there. Go ahead and engage the safety pin. And the ice cream man is coming, so that means we're going to get ice cream today. Next, go ahead and get the top one, and we're going to go ahead and put it on here. We're going to try to see if we can get it up here, and we might be able to. So we're just going to go down here, engage the safety pin, and then we're going to go ahead and put this up, and we're going to just screw one of the bottom ones in. And this is where impacts are going to come in handy, because if you just have ratchets, it's going to take forever to compress the spring. Now that the ice cream man left, we can continue. So we're going to pretty much repeat the same thing that we did here on this side. We're going to go ahead and get the bottom one, and then try to fit it in the same line that we used this one right here. Sometimes it's tricky to get them in the same one, because the lower you go, the tighter the spring gets. So we might not be able to get it on there, but we can get it on the top one right here. So as long as they're not too far offset from each other, it should be fine. Let's go ahead and get the top one. I'm going to screw it in. So with all of our safety pins engaged, that's how it should look like. Now we're going to go ahead and screw the screw onto the clamps so it can compress the spring. I'm going to try to get the best angles that I can when I record this, but I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I'll be able to. When you're compressing the spring, this is how you want it to look. You don't want the clamps to be moving side to side, because it's going to make all the tension be on one side. So make sure that they stay perfectly across from each other. So we're going to go ahead and get our 19 millimeter, and we're going to go ahead and fasten down one side. And then we're going to go ahead and do the same thing to the other side. And you don't want to fasten it down all the way down on one side, because then this metal top cap right here is going to line up against this, and it's going to be impossible for you to put your socket on there. Now what we're gonna do is just go from side to side and tying down each side. Now you don't want to do too much of it. Like I said, this will hit the socket and it'll be hard to take it out. So just take your time and go side to side. So that's how your spring is supposed to look like when you compress it. Now that we have our spring compressed, we're gonna go ahead and remove the top hat right here. In order to do that, you're gonna need to use a adjustable wrench and a size 14mm wrench. And what you're basically gonna do is, with the adjustable wrench, you're gonna clamp onto the top of this guy right here. You're gonna do this so that this can stay still, so that you can rotate the nut out of there. So just go ahead and close that on there. And then get your 14mm and then just loosen this up. Once you guys have removed this nut, go ahead and remove the top hat off. So just pry it off right here and it should come off. Be careful not to lose these guys right here. Go ahead and get these guys out as well. Our bump stop. Now that we have everything out of the shock absorber slash spring, we can go ahead and decompress the spring, because we're not going to be using the spring or the shock anymore. So all we need to do is just loosen everything up and decompress it so that we can compress the new lowering spring. This is a comparison between the original spring and the lowering springs that I got here. So pretty huge difference, as you guys can see. We're gonna go ahead and line up the spring. On the bottom right here, there should be this little like indentation where the spring should sit. So it should look like that. And when you install the hat on here, that's how it should look too. There's a rubber piece on the hat, that right here, that the spring rests on. So first what we need to do is compress the spring, and then we'll put everything back on. So we're pretty much repeating the same thing that we did to compress it. before. So we're gonna go ahead and get our bottom one first. Gonna go ahead and insert it. And then we're gonna go ahead and insert the top one. And since these are lowering springs, you don't need to compress them as much because they're already shorter than the original ones. So just keep that in mind. And the reason that I'm installing the shock and the spring at the same time is because when these rods go down all the way, they're going to come very close in contact to each other, and you're not going to be able to feed the shock absorber through it. So just follow exactly what I'm doing and it'll be pretty easy. So we're going to go ahead and tighten both sides down again to compress the spring. So that should be enough to fit the top hat on. So we're gonna go ahead and just put everything that we took off of it. I'm gonna get this bump stop right here, the cover, this rubber right here. We're gonna get the hat and put it on. Now, it's important to align these guys up. So this hat's supposed to go right here, just like so. And then you're gonna put the top rubber piece on. Now I was gonna replace these things right here, like as you guys can see it's cracked, but I couldn't find them anywhere and I had to go to the dealer and it was a special order, and honestly I just want to get these guys installed. But I would recommend for you guys to get new bump stops and then to get a new boot, because as you guys can see I don't have a boot. Nobody had the boot locally, so I was out of luck on that, but that's not gonna stop us from installing the lowering springs. The new shock absorber came with a new nut, so we're going to install this one instead of the old one. And then when you get to a certain point, this is going to spin together, so remember to use the adjustable wrench to hold it still. And then go ahead and tighten it down with the 14mm wrench. Now you don't want to tighten these down all the way just yet. We're going to wait until they're in the car and the car is on the ground, but we just want it so that it's a little bit down, so that when we decompress the springs, it doesn't come flying out. I found an easy way to tighten down this fastener, and that is to use the adjustable wrench. And we're gonna be tightening up the fastener by spinning the top bolt right here. We're gonna do this counterclockwise, because if we do it clockwise, it's gonna loosen up the nut. So we're gonna go ahead and get the adjustable wrench. And turn, and then if you guys pay attention, you guys will be able to see that it's gonna actually tighten down the fastener, since it's not gonna be spinning freely since we have these guys right here in the way. Now that we have everything back on the shock, we're gonna go ahead and decompress the spring. Make sure that this guy right here doesn't go over, and make sure that up here, this guy doesn't come off from the rubber boot right here. So we're gonna go ahead and just be careful for those things and remove the clamps right here. And that, boys, is how you do it. Well, not like that because I'm dropping everything, but you guys get what I'm saying. And as you guys can see, our spring fits on there nicely. And everything's ready to go. So we're just gonna put this back on the car. Now that our shock and spring are back together, we're gonna go ahead and put it back on the car. So just go ahead and sneak it underneath the fender, and you're gonna wanna go ahead and line up the studs first. So line them up. Once they're lined up, go ahead and fasten them down, just so that it can stay still and it doesn't fall. Next, what we need to do is pick up the lower control arm on the car so that we can mount the shock absorber to the bottom of the suspension right here. So go ahead and get your jack and just jack it up from the bottom of the lower control arm, just like so. And then you're gonna line up the hole right here with the hole on the shock absorber. Once we have our hole lined up with the shock absorber, go ahead and put in your stud. And then if you guys have a hard time lining these guys up, I suggest for you guys to use a small flathead and then just move it around until it lines up like how I did right here. So now that it's in, go ahead and get your hammer and then just tap it into place. Now just go ahead and put your 17mm on here, 17mm wrench, and then go ahead and tighten it up from the other side. Next, what we need to do is line up the bracket right here with this upper link. In order to do that, we're gonna need some help from the jack again. So we're gonna keep jacking it up, and then with our hand we're gonna guide it until it's in position. If you're having a hard time lining up this bracket with the upper link, what you guys can do is get the small flathead and put it in here, and then just trying to line it up so that the hole can meet on here. And then once you guys have it lined up, you guys can go ahead and install the bolt. But make sure to put the screwdriver in here and just line it up for you when you're doing this so that you don't struggle so much. Now that you have everything lined up, go ahead and put your bolt back in. If it doesn't go in smoothly, you might need to hit it with a hammer. Next, go ahead and put your nut back on. And go ahead and tighten this down, and then also get a wrench in the back right here, and then just tighten this down so it won't spin freely. Now that you guys have put that bolt back on, I'm gonna go ahead and torque it down. I don't know the torque spec out of the top of my head, but I'm gonna just torque it down to around 90 foot-pounds. And then we're also gonna torque down the bolt right here for the bottom, for the shock. We're gonna also torque that to 90 foot-pounds. Now that we have everything tightened down, we're gonna go ahead and put our brake line back on, and we're also gonna put our ABS wire back on. So if you guys remembered, for the brake hose right here, we have this clip. And if you guys just want to know what way this is supposed to go, the little clip right here, the portion that's sticking out, is supposed to be facing up. So just like that. Go ahead and get your hammer and hammer that in. Next, go ahead and put your 10mm fasteners back in for the bracket that holds the ABS wire. Now that we have everything pretty much finished on this side, we're gonna go ahead and go in the rear. Now that we have done the front, we're gonna go ahead and do the rear. So go ahead and remove the wheel. For the rear of the car, the shocks are a lot easier to replace. As you guys can see, there's only one fastener right here holding the bottom of the shock in, and there's nothing else. So this one's actually going to be pretty easy. We're first going to start by removing the 17mm bolt. When you guys remove this fastener, it's gonna want to drop on you, so just be careful. Now the only thing holding this in place are the two bolts up there that we removed for the front shocks. In order to get access to those, we're gonna have to remove some parts of the carpet from the trunk. We're gonna go ahead and pop our trunk. To get access to the fasteners that are holding the top of the shock on, what we need to do is remove these clips that hold this carpet in place. Once we remove them, we'll be able to drop this down. With those two clips out of the way, go ahead and pull down the carpet. And then, as you guys can see, we have access to our two remaining fasteners. These fasteners are also going to be 12mm, so go ahead and remove them. And then when you guys are removing this, don't be afraid to let it go, since there's nothing connected on here. You can just simply let it go and it'll fall on the ground. Now that our shock is free, we can go ahead and remove it. We're gonna go ahead and compress our shock the same way we compress the front shock. The only difference between this and the front shock is that for the rear shock, we're gonna have to use this extension because the socket gets stuck a lot. So that's the only difference that you're gonna notice. Now that our spring on the shock is compressed, we're gonna go ahead and remove the fastener right here holding the top head on. So if you guys remembered, we're gonna use our 14mm and our adjustable wrench. And we're gonna go ahead and loosen these guys up. This is a height comparison between these two springs. As you guys can see, the rear spring is not too different compared to the Tein lowering spring. They're about the same size. This one's maybe about an inch shorter. But let's go ahead and install them into the car. Now that we have everything ready, let's go ahead and install the shock and spring back in. Go ahead and line up the shock absorber up here with these holes. And then when you have that lined up, what you want to do is push down on the frame right here of the car. And you're going to do that because when you install the fastener right here in the bottom, it's not going to line up since there's not enough pressure. So you need to line this up by pressing down on here, and then you'll be able to stick your stud through there. If you can't line it up, go ahead and use your flathead screwdriver to help you out. Once you have it in, go ahead and just screw it all the way in until it goes through the other side for this nut right here. We're also going to torque this guy down to about 90 foot-pounds. The last thing that we need to pretty much do is put these fasteners back on to hold the top of the strut to the frame of the car. Once you put your strut back on, go ahead and put the carpet back on as well. I didn't record the other side of the car because it's technically the exact same thing. So with that being said, let's go ahead and drop the car. Now that we finished installing all the shocks and lowering springs on the car, let's take some measurements to see what the height is. Now if you guys remembered, with the stock suspension, we were about 25 inches and a half in the front. So let's see how much it dropped it with the lowering springs. Alright, so it looks like we're about 24 inches and a half, so roughly around 1 inch drop in the front, which is not too bad. I didn't want it too low. Now let's go ahead and check the rear to see how much inches we dropped. In the rear, we were roughly around 26 inches. So let's see how much it dropped. So right here, we're about 24 7/8 of an inch. So not too bad, maybe a little bit over an inch that we dropped in the rear, which is pretty good. We pretty much have an even drop all the way around. But let me go ahead and get you some better shots in an open area. Now that we have the car in an open area, I just wanted to let you guys know that I really like the setup of how it looks right now. I've driven the car for about a day and a half now since I lowered it, and it's pretty comfortable ride. It doesn't feel like very stiff or not stiff enough. It feels like the stock suspension, but it just feels smoother. It feels tighter around the corners, and it just gives you better handling. Now it's not a huge difference as far as the drop goes, but if you guys are just looking for a small drop, nothing too dramatic, then these are great springs for that. Every time I brake, I don't feel like I'm getting like thrown out the window. If you guys have a Infiniti G20, you guys will understand what I'm saying. When you guys are braking hard, you feel like you're gonna fly out the window, since like the front brakes are the ones doing the most of the work. You feel like you're just getting pushed forward. I don't feel that anymore with the suspension that I have now, and it feels just great. I can like turn fast. I don't have to like wait for the car to slow down. I feel like everything's nice and firm on the suspension. So that's pretty much gonna conclude the end of this video. If you guys have any questions, please make sure to leave them down below, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out, guys.